Can you try that again?
It's Persuasion.
Okay, I spelled
You
it
got it
right.
right.
No, you're fine. Mostly, I just wanted you to reiterate it because I wanted our cold open for this week to be you spelling
Me
out the
just
word.
saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Hi, we are live here to chat about Dakota Johnson starring in Persuasion. Beth and Rio on Good Girls are hooking up finally, but also again, Falcon and Winter Soldier is almost over, which is probably the most respectable TV I've watched all week. And there's been some DCCW stuff airing. So lots to talk about. Kate and I are also both reading Shadow and Bone, except for one of us is on chapter 2 and the other one is on book 2. So basically the same thing.
I'm done with book 2.
You're done with book. You know what? We can't all be winners. So I won't be. Anyways, we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to dive right into news. And by we, I mean Kate. Take it away. What's our biggest piece of news today?
Okay, so a couple months ago we did to talk about how there was a modern, like, Hallmark style adaptation of Persuasion coming out. That's already coming out, but I still have yet to see it. But there was also an announcement of a actual Persuasion adaptation that was going to be in production, starring somebody from an HBO show. I forget the name of it, but we did talk about it. A couple days ago, it was actually announced that there is another Persuasion movie in the works starring Dakota Johnson, and it's going to be through Netflix. There's very little info about that one. She's the only casting I saw, whereas the other one has some other people cast already. But I'm excited. I don't know how I feel necessarily about that casting. I don't have any strong opinions on it. To me, it's more of like, let's just compare and see how they're very different castings and different productions are very clearly already. So it'll just be fun to compare and contrast and see which does what better. Also, it was also announced that Downton Abbey is getting a second movie. If you care about that, yay!
I do care about that very much.
Yes. And then just a reminder that Shadow and Bone comes out on Friday.
So excited. I will not be watching as soon as it drops on Friday, nor will I be watching on Saturday. I've got a bunch of stuff that I gotta help with and handle this weekend. But as soon as possible, I'll be watching it, and I will very quickly be watching past the point at which I've read. Okay, so let's just for a second. You said you don't have any opinions on the Persuasion casting, and I just have a hard time believing that. As somebody who has completely unwarranted opinions about stuff I have not watched, have not read, know very little about, that is so respectable and unrelatable. So, like, really, what are your opinions on Dakota Johnson being cast in Persuasion? Because I watched, I think, one and a half 50 Shades of Grey movies. I don't remember exactly. I've watched at least one full 50 Shades of Grey movies, fifth of the movies, and there's at least one I haven't seen. And then I think I watched parts of another one. And I don't think she's a bad actress at all. I think that she is very like she's very much she reminds me I hate this comparison but even though I like Kristen Stewart, but I don't mean to compare the two of them because they're both like leads of like controversial franchises, I guess, but they both have a very understated way of playing a character, or at least that's what I've seen them in thus far, and I think that might lend itself well to this sort of Regency setting. What do you think?
I haven't seen her act at all, which is mainly why I didn't have an opinion. Other than I've seen her in an interview or two before, and I can agree she kind of has that, like, she has a certain personality of like down to earth, kind of more relatable. She doesn't seem quite as like starstruck kind of person. She wouldn't leave you starstruck when you saw her, kind of thing. Um, and in that aspect, I think that's kind of good. A lot of times when they pick people that are superstars for period dramas, it takes you out of it. So somebody that we know, but not the biggest star on the planet right now, that's kind of a good thing. Um, And from what you said, her being kind of more understated, that's always good too, especially in the ones that are not as comedic. And Persuasion's one of the less comedic
Mm-hmm.
of the Austen novels. So I think it could be good, but like I said, I've never really seen her act, so I'm just kind of going, yeah, she looks kind of like what I would have pictured Anne to look like. That works.
Mm-hmm. The casting, the latest Jane Austen thing I've seen was Anya Taylor Joy and Emma, and that was such brilliant casting. I have a hard time imagining something being better, but I'm excited about this Dakota Johnson thing. And I think from what you sent me, it's like from the producers of Knives Out or something like that, or they have some people from Knives Out signing
Mm-hmm.
on to it. And I loved not just like the story, the movie Knives Out, but like the quality and direction of that movie, top notch. So excited about that.
Yeah, that movie was really, it kind of had the uniqueness of the newest Emma movie, but in a murder mystery kind of way. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they'll go completely like Emma 2020 with Persuasion, but I think they might take like a fresh take on it. I don't know. Um, I'm interested to see how it compares to the other one.
Yeah, same. Any other news pieces that you have for this week?
Not that I can think of. That was pretty much all I saw.
The only one I had is like not worth talking about, I guess, both because of what it's about and the fact that it's a completely unsubstantiated rumor. But past contestants of The Bachelor are saying that the franchise has been canceled, and they're just not saying that it's canceled, but that the last season filmed this year, which will be Michelle's season, which is the one I'm most excited about, will be the last season of the show. So that there'll be like, there's going to be Katie's season of The Bachelor, which is starting in like June or whatever. It's filming now. There'll be Bachelor in Paradise airing over the summer. There's going to be the next Bachelor airing in the fall. And then that will be the last of it. Because like the show went downhill after like the crap that was Matt James' season. And if so, that's so fair. And also, it's just a rumor. And sometimes these contestants make up absolute bullshit for clicks. But I guess if it gets canceled, I can't be mad at it. But I literally just got here, Kate. Like, I haven't been watching this show that long. Like, I started
It feels
rewatching.
like it's been a long time. I'm sorry, I'm kidding.
Kate's like, "Are you sure it hasn't been literal years?" Yeah, I literally just
Sorry, I just
started.
came right after you.
So fair, really fair point. Um, hold on, this tab stopped being muted. Okay. Yeah, I just started watching it like in the latest the latest I've watched it in the latest decade was literally this year, starting in January. And then previously I watched it when I was like in college and like I was like a child. Like anyways. Okay, on to Better and Brighter. It might be canceled. You all might be put out of your misery. Let's get into what you should be watching. So I have two headliners for this week. One is what you see in the picture below. That's going to be Good Girls, aka the Beth and Rio show. Super excited to just kind of pitch what I've been loving about Good Girls this week. And then I want us to talk about Falcon and Winter Soldier because Kate, it's almost over. And I know we're not like in love with it the way we were in love with WandaVision, but I feel like this week's episode is really good. And I've really just been enjoying every week's episode. So we'll get into that as the second half of our headliner. But first, Kate, here's why you should be watching Good Girls. Number one, this week we meet. Okay, so we've had like a bad guy on Good Girl. Okay, so you've been reading Shadow and Bone. Let me just interrupt
Mm-hmm.
myself for the fourth time in one sentence. You've been reading Shadow and Bone. You are familiar with, shall we say, the bad guy trope. And I get that that might not be what you typically ship. I know that that's not what I typically ship, and that's so fine. And like, we'll get into Shadow and Bone and like whether 3 chapters in, I have the right to an opinion on ships. But Good Girls is like indisputably the right approach to the bad guy ship, because what they've done is they've taken like this like bad guy who's like, I'm going to say mob boss, but that's like not the most specific description of his job. But, you know, like he'll like market counter, like wash counterfeit money. I think at one point he was like getting rid of like fake, you know, what I like, he just basically like peddles like fake shit and counterfeit money and like generally breaks the law. Okay. A bad person. But he has a good heart and he's really hot. And he has a kid who he takes care of. And he takes really good care of his employees. And by his employees, I mean Christina Hendricks, who is his partner, business partner in the show. She on the, so like he has this like hard exterior facade of like being a really bad person and also kind of is a really bad person. Like, he kills people, I guess, sometimes on occasion or whatever. And then you have Christina Hendricks, also hot, very important. And she on the exterior is like everything you would think of as like the show's called Good Girls. Like everything you would think, like suburban housewife, PTA member, nice to people, super sweet. And she maintains that demeanor, that like sweet Sharon PTA mom demeanor throughout the entirety of the show, thus far, even through present. But she does bad things. So it's like she's nice on the outside, but really, truly does some terrible things on the inside. Anyways, they're partners. It's the perfect application of like the bad guy trope because they're both bad. So it's not like this whole like devil and angel thing of like he's a piece of crap and she's the nicest person ever, because like low key like you can't really spin that for longer than a scene or two without it being like, why is she with him then, you know what I mean? Like they both have to have it's so good. They've had this whole thing of like he's been the bad guy. We find out recently he has a boss who's like basically calls the shots when it comes to him, and it was kind of hyped up her meeting his boss, and it turns out it's his grandma, who is this sweet older lady but also like low-key a mob boss. He takes Christina Hendricks to family dinner. They're mistaken for a couple. It's so cute. They're really hot. And when I was looking for the picture that you see on screen right now, I literally just Googled like Good Girls, Beth and Rio. And the first thing that comes up is it's like an article that is answering the question, do Beth and Rio ever hook up on Good Girls? And spoilers, they do. Anyways, that's why you should watch it. Would you
It
willingly
sounds just like it just sounds like a Mob AU version of Felicity. That's what it is.
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. Down to like the reveal of Moira Rose this week. And that's like that's what my question is for you. And that's why I made it the headliner. We were talking earlier that basically like reading between the lines, and I don't want to steal your Shadow and Bone Thunder, but like you don't tend to go for like the bad guy ship. But this week, this episode for this show, I mean, the show's been like straight quality this entire time, but this week in particular really does a good job of like, because it's heavy on the romance this week, really does a good job of showing why it works because they are both bad and they are both good. Would you watch a
Mhm.
show that had the bad guy trope where there's not like some other ship? Like, there's not like nobody's going to ship her with like her piece of shit husband who cheats on her, who's supposed to be the nice guy. Like, this is the only ship. It's not a triangle. Would you watch a show that had the bad guy as the main ship, knowing that that's not usually your thing?
I I would definitely be willing to try because I'm not fully like hard soft, no bad guy ever. It's more of just like that's not normally what I like. It's not normally what I gravitate towards. Um, but if it's good or if they're both that morally gray to pretty much bad guy level bad guy, just complex, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, Stormy's in the chat. She says she's 3 episodes behind on Good Girls. Sorry for the spoiler, Stormy. But she adds, for me, most, if not all, characters on Good Girl are morally gray. Yeah, it's kind of like, and it's not even just the adults. Like, because it's following, like, kind of like Harvey and Donna aged people, a couple of them have kids. And even the kids, they really show them being morally gray. The neighbors, the good people, the mob associates, like everybody on all sides are very like morally gray. Now, they are not all equally morally gray. The show, Christina Hendricks is like the lead, but there's like 3 women that are kind of an ensemble lead that includes her sister and their best friend. And all 3 of them are morally gray, but I would say Christina Hendricks' character maybe does the most like cutthroat or worst things sometimes. Like in this last episode, one of the characters basically has a romantic interaction, not sexual, but romantic interaction with a guy who is about to get married the next day. So it's just like real squicky stuff. But he didn't want to get married the next day, but that doesn't make it better. You know, like it's not like the comfortable kind of morally gray of like, she was a hashtag girl boss. Like, it's not that kind of shit. It's like really morally gray. Airs at 10 p.m. morally gray, but good stuff. Highly recommend. This is proof that even though I'm likely going to ship the nice ship on Shadow and Bone once we get to, you know, a far enough place in the book where I can get there. And even though I ship the nice ship on like a million other things, including like Gale and Katniss and like all that kind of stuff, there are still some bad guy ships I like. That's all. We move onward to Falcon and Winter Soldier and take it away. What did you think of this week's episode?
I I kind of continue on in my like it's good. I'm not like crazy about the show, but it was good. I will say there were 2 things that happened that drove me crazy that continue to bother me now.
Okay.
Sam training with the shield and having whatever Wakanda suit he has, but not training in the suit is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. He's going to put on a suit and go into battle without training in the suit. Like the first time he's going to put on this new suit and presumably wings is when he's going into battle. He's not
I
practiced in it at all.
I hear you. I hear you, but due
I
to
know.
the required scientific formula of a comic book hero origin story, he is required to train shirtless or it doesn't work. Therefore, he cannot wear the
No,
suit
like
the whole
he
time.
didn't have to try. He didn't have to do it. Like he didn't have to train with it every single scene of that montage. But him not training with it at all before going into this big battle that we're heading into in episode 6 makes no sense to me. It bothered me out of my mind.
Do you think they're just like saving it so it can be like a reveal when he first walks into Big
It
Showdown?
definitely is. It is definitely more like it's more of the reveal factor, like the shock factor. It's some just another little surprise that didn't give us. I understand why they did it, but just on the logistics, there was a couple different logistics points in this episode that just drove me crazy. And normally I can let them go for when they're really about like sacrificing logic for character growth.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't do anything. It's just for a surprise. Same thing with in the after credit in the mid credit scene when John Walker is making the new shield. He welds it together, then he takes it apart, he paints it, then he puts it back together.
That
I
is
was
a good
like,
point.
no, no.
That is a
I'm
very
sure that just
engineer
has
of
to do
you to
with
point that out.
editing. I was like watching, I was like, no, 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 no. Why? It made no sense.
I didn't even think of it that way. Oh, was he like testing to make sure the pieces fit together before he painted it, or
I mean, I can you can give that explanation of him like fitting it before painting it, but I think he welded it before he painted it, which means he had to figure out a way to take it apart, which ruins it,
yeah.
and then paint it and then re-weld it. I don't know. Those were details that shouldn't have bothered me. That wasn't. They're not things that really should matter in the grand scheme of things. But it was just kind of. I'm having trouble enjoying fully the storytelling in this show. I can't explain why. It was just these small details that really grabbed my attention and just I couldn't over it.
I think a lot of times when we
They're
get,
not actual critiques of the show.
yeah, I think a lot of times when we get like hung up in the details, although I think what you're pointing out is like actual distracting logistics, it's not like minor details, but when we get hung up in that, it's because the show has not created an environment and story that sucked us in enough to where we're suspending disbelief and just like allowing it to tell us a story. So I'm wondering like what's missing in this story and in this storytelling that is not sucking us into this world enough to where we are just sort of suspending disbelief, or like for example, rather than finding it distracting that John Walker is assembling the shield in a certain way, had this been in a show where we frequently theorize, we might be theorizing like, oh, is that supposed to symbolize something, or was he putting something in it, or was there some sort of, is it supposed to be a metaphor for, you know, how this shield can be deconstructed, you know, like a, I hate to put it this way, but like a smarter show that hides clues and everything, we would simply be theorizing about this stuff rather than picking it apart. So maybe it's just that it's too straightforward of a story that isn't leaving room for that theory. I hesitate to even give that criticism though, because I, for this second week in a row, I was sucked into this episode. I was really into it.
I I like the show. It's not a bad show. I think the story points to about good versus evil, corruption, all that good stuff. Um, the impact of trauma just in a different way than what was WandaVision. But I don't know why I don't love it as much. There's just something about it that kind of I just hate to say it, it kind of bores me. So
Mm.
I think you are right that when I notice these clunky things, it's more just because it's just something concrete that I can grab onto that isn't very much like that's the thing I don't like. Because there's other things that I know I don't like something, I just can't tell you what it is,
Do you
which is
like
frustrating. I want to like the show. It's,
war movies?
I mean, I have liked war movies. There are plenty that I've seen that I have liked, but I don't, they're not like my top genre
Me neither.
of movie. But this one's kind of almost like a spy movie too, and I know I like spy
Yeah.
movies pretty well.
Yeah. There's an element of like constantly wondering if and who somebody either is a double agent or can become a double agent. And that, A, I like, and B, I wonder if presented differently, it could foster more of sort of a theorizing environment. But maybe that's what they're trying to go for. I don't know. Carrie in the chat says the only thing that took me out of the show was JLD showing up. Julia Louis Dreyfus, yes, with her little purpley blue hair thing. All I could think of is what is Elaine doing here? Yes. Seinfeld, Veep. She's got a lot of notable roles. I liked her showing up, not just because I liked her in the show badly needs more women, but also because it added a extreme, I'm not one usually for like extremely comic booky elements, but it added such a comic booky element. Like she felt so much like a comic book character. They, you know, kind of went a little over the top by giving her like the colored hair. Like I could look at her and without necessarily knowing like details of her history or the exact, you know, like version or era of a comic book character that she is, I do know that she is a comic book character. So that was kind of nice.
Well, and Marvel has now officially established their color for pure villain, like don't question it, is pretty much purple.
Yep.
And morally gray people that are going to be selfish, but are a lot of times going to do something kind of good are green.
Yes.
And then everybody else is whatever they want. That's the color scheme that they're trying to tell us. And they have fully cemented that in this Thanos, Agnes, her.
Agnes is a villain? What?
Mm-hmm. What?
It was Agatha all along?
All along? Yeah.
Carrie also says in the chat, why did I think the center art graphic was Alice and Ocean from Batwoman? So referencing the thumbnail and what I previously had on screen, which was Beth and Rio from Good Girls. You thought that because you have taste, you recognized that she has the same, strong alpha, slightly villainous energy. Also, Carrie, if you're not watching Good Girls, watch Good Girls. Very good show. You will thoroughly enjoy it. This is Team Beth and Rio. So speaking of shipping, am I the only person, and I already know I'm not because I tweeted about this, but at the time I tweeted about it, I wasn't sure if I was the only person. Okay, listen, I know you know what I'm about to say, but like bear with me so I can. Okay, so let me flash back several years ago, okay, to watching The Force Awakens in theaters, like pretty much right when it came out, okay? And up until this point, I had literally no spoilers and did not care about Star Wars at all. And I'm like in a fairly like cushy theater chair. I'm like back, I'm like slumped over. Like a good 70% of people will like thoroughly disagree with what I'm about to say, but that is my reality, is my truth. So I'm like slumping back like this. And we get to the forest scene in The Force Awakens, right? And again, I don't know much about science fiction, fantasy, Star Wars, any of this world, but I do know Disney romance, okay? I know one thing. And I see this lovely girl in like this sort of like white, flowy, whatever situation, literally like damsel in distress, pass out, and this tall, ominous looking guy who, for all intents and purposes, to me, who does not know Star Wars, literally like catches her and bridal carries her. And when I tell you, I went from like this to like this, like literally ass on the edge of my seat, leaning forward, hands on knees. I'm like, oh, hold on. Anyways, that was my exact reaction the second Bucky stepped on Sarah's boat. No euphemism or puns intended there. Before they said a word, before they saw each other, before she was even there, he entered her space and like something in my brain clicked. Like Peter was like looking at me like, what are you doing? Like I went from like back in like my cushy chair to like up, and I was like, hold on a second. Anyways, just like a super casual question, do you ship Sarah and Bucky by any chance?
Okay, I haven't died yet. Okay, I'm good now. I don't think as thoroughly as you do. I don't think I'm quite as invested that we had to go back into our 7 years ago, our feelings on Force Awakens to explain the parallel. Like that's not, but I'm like, yeah, that's fun, that's cool, it's cute, and like messing with Sam. So like fully support it, but also not to that level. You okay?
I just think they're so like they have all of the perfect like potential elements, okay? So he is kind of melodramatic and she's very pragmatic. He is very much like he acts like he's like a grumpy grandpa, and she acts like she has a little bit more youth to her. Also, I think he's supposed to be really old, but I don't know much about Marvel in order to say that. If he's like too old to where it's weird, I'm like not gonna apologize and I'll probably consider shipping it anyways, because like it's all about looks and they're both like very hot together. Their style of like flirting I think really works. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Cammie, they didn't flirt. And I disagree. I firmly believe that they did.
No, no, they flirted.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I feel like I'm just going crazy.
No, no, I'm there with you. They did flirt. We're
Okay.
here.
Okay. I think they're great. I know a lot of people shipped past tense him and Steve Rogers, and like I get it. I respect it. Like Vanessa Hudgens talking about COVID voice, like I get it. I respect that. But now we're shipping Bucky and Sarah, and that's just my reality. Stormy says, I ship Bucky and Sarah. I really want Bucky to find peace and love. You know when he will find peace and love sleeping on Sarah's couch and waking up happy to the sound of kids running around in the morning.
You know, that I will say was one part that I did actually really like was this episode clarified and showed a lot of progress for him, even though a lot of it wasn't about him, just like his like, behavior in the scenes showed him processing a lot of the grief by kind of instead of he finally is doing what Sam recommended, not crossing names off a list, but rather like trying to just heal himself kind of thing. Uh, and so like him seeing the kids and stuff like that and actually just kind of having peace in that, I was like, you know, that's good. That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. It was nice to see that contrast as well between like the part of his journey that he's in. So Bucky is trying to Bucky, whether he's trying to or not, he is healing. He is there's been wounds that he has continuously just ripped open over and over and over and over, and he is now at a place where he's ready to heal. Whereas we see for Sam, he's at a place where he's needing to rip open old wounds that never healed properly, or wounds that he hasn't even acknowledged are there, coming to grips with the history of the government that he is serving or trying to serve, coming to grips with the history of the place of black super soldiers in this entire system, and you know the darkness that he may see as in the past but is still present day. Like there's so much like ripping open and like, okay, we're going to stop denying this, we're going to stop pretending this doesn't exist, we're going to stop pretending this didn't ever exist so that we can move forward. And they allowed him and Bucky to be at different places in their journey. I think that was smart because you have like the end of um, Sam's talk with former super soldier. He says, you know, they'll never let a black man be Captain America. And we have to, as like an optimistic comic book viewer, we have to assume that the exact opposite is going to happen at the end of this season. Maybe not, you know, like I can't predict the ending necessarily, but if this follows like a Marvel formula, we are going to see Sam be Captain America by the end of this season. But he has to like rip open a bunch of wounds, train through them and heal through them before he can do that. Otherwise, he just becomes the guy who is handed Captain America's shield and is worthy, but doesn't actually understand like the dark side of who he's serving. Anyways, I thought that journey was interesting. Carrie says the big tell about how comfy Bucky felt at Sam's house and with Sarah is that he slept on the couch. You remember the first time we see him sleep, it was on the floor and he had a nightmare. So this was fun. And it was either in like the previews for this episode or at some point in the beginning of this episode, he mentioned something about nightmares again. So I feel like they wanted us to notice that he woke up peacefully and slept on the couch, not the floor, because Bucky and Sarah are endgame. Thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. I will have pamphlets on the way out. They are so cute. Listen, I asked for one thing. That's a lie. I asked for many things. But the thing that I asked for next, Kate, I want the classic trope of someone, probably the Flag Smashers, but I'm not going to be picky, comes and attacks Sarah's home or boat or whatever. I do not need to see like any kind of trauma or pain. Like I don't want to see her injured. I need no blood. Like this is not, I'm not here to celebrate female trauma at all. Just in danger. And I want to see Bucky go ballistic over it. That's all I ask. No injury, no kidnapping, just the presence of danger, and he goes ballistic. And then I will expose my next series of demands.
I love how chaotic you are becoming right now. First of all, I just want to point out, I'm sorry, but if they're going to let either one of them be ballistic, it's got to be Sam. I agree with you that they're going in this ship, and I fully agree that they're flirting. And I wouldn't think it's sick. Don't get me wrong. But in the way of Arrow and sometimes it not feeling like the right person was to go for the right person, sometimes I'm like, okay, where's Roy or where's this person or this person to go ballistic? Because that feels more like that should be the person. We got Oliver always having to be angry, and this is Sam's sister, so it's got to be Sam.
I hear
I get
you.
it. I get where you're coming from. Also, Bucky. I was just gonna say, also Bucky is like 102, but I fully support your thing. Like he looks young, so it's fine.
Right. And he also like I feel like he's like an immature 102. You know what I mean? I do hear you on like it. I don't want to see Bucky take away from Sam's journey, and I don't want to see Bucky take the shine, the spotlight, or certainly any like meaningful emotional beats that should go to Sam, obviously. I would still not mind seeing him go ballistic if Sarah was in danger, but like maybe it can be like a second place ballistic or like an after the fact, are you okay? Would you like me to make you dinner and light some candles? I'll put a cheesecake in the fridge type of situation.
Okay.
Okay. You know what? Before we close out with some very brief thoughts on Supergirl and Batwoman, I want to talk about Shadow and Bone. Because when it comes to everything else I've talked about so far, I've actually like watched it, so I have a warranted opinion. You have read the first two books of Shadow and Bone. I am on page like 50 something. Like I haven't literally just read one chapter, but I'm like not even a quarter of the way through the book. But I have ship opinions already. I do want to hear yours first. Take us away.
Oh, you want to hear mine first?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am not a subscriber to like it always has to be enemies to lovers, it always has to be friends to lovers. I am fully in the I like strong-willed people that make each other better. And a lot of times that just falls into with one of those two categories. This one has to be Mal. Now, I will tell you, there are 3 ships with her throughout the books. Yes. You haven't met one of them yet.
Oh, I've just barely met the Darkling.
Good fight. Yeah. So I feel like you know my opinion on the Darkling. I don't need to tell you how I feel about that. I'm like, take it. I don't need it. The other one, I'm like, there's Mal, but if I can't have Mal, second place.
The third, you were cutting out. So you're saying the third, so there's Mal, the Darkling, and then unknown person. And in order, you would rank them Mal.
Third unknown character, Darkling. Darkling, no. I'd rather her, no.
Okay.
Actually, to be perfectly honest, if you want to count all the people that have like gone after her, there's 4 men. There's 4.
Okay. So I've got options. Some of her
power plays. I trust you. I think normally you have good taste. we've only ever fully disagreed on one thing.
Was it Phantom
Um,
of the Opera?
so yes. Uh, so I believe in you. However, this is slightly Phantom of the Opera, so there is that. Um, but I believe in you. I think you can do it.
Let me tell you what my problem is. I'm a loyal bitch, okay? I am. I I'm flaky in that I lie, but when it comes to a ship, once I ship something, I will generally stick with it. And if the ship loses my interest, but like I'm still into like the book, the show, whatever, I'll be, like, oh, I did ship this, but, this character turned out blah, 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 whatever the case, they lost me, but I'm going to keep watching because whatever. Flash is a good example of that. I liked a particular ship in Flash. I liked Barry and Caitlin. That wasn't the direction the show went, so that's not something that like I would actively pursue anymore. But I still like Caitlin, so I still watch the show. You see what I'm saying? But I'm like loyal. I'm not like switching over to another ship on the show. However, literally, Kate, within the span of like however long I've read, I have liked, or I have first disliked, then disliked, then liked again her with Mal in the span of 50 pages. I came in initially being like, no, absolutely not. I do not like when they have been like raised as siblings. I'm fine with like
That
the.
was my problem with it.
Was it? Okay, good. Because I don't like when they've been raised as siblings simply because there's kind of an ick factor to it. Now, that line of like, oh, they're childhood sweethearts, absolutely. Like a Scott and Tessa situation where they were training to dance together since they were very young, absolutely. I even like I had the little like Disney ship that was like sort of step siblings and they met when they were like 16, 17. Sure, that kind of thing, like a little like half, borderline, like, ooh, is it? Whatever, as long as they were not raised together. But if they're raised together, not only is there a little bit of like an ick factor, and I don't mean a taboo, like, ooh, but like an ick factor, it also feels unrealistic because I think we've all like, we either have siblings or we have people that we've been like raised around like siblings and we could never see them that way. Like, whatever. So that was my initial problem. But when it flashed to, and I don't remember exactly how young they were in the beginning, but when it flashed to, present day when they were older, it became very clear that they did not have a sibling dynamic. They were not being mistaken for siblings. They didn't see each other. So I was like, okay, it wasn't that kind of thing. It was more like they were like at an orphanage together. Got it. So I was back on board. Then they had him seem like he's kind of a player who's like essentially, I'm going to sound like I'm like a 6-year-old Middle Eastern woman explaining this, but I don't know like how else to say this. Like head turned too easily by women. Okay, like I literally sound like my aunt, but like his neck is swayed too easily by women walking down the street, and I instantly dislike that because I hate that in a guy. I'm fine with like a love triangle. I don't love triangles, but like I can read through a love triangle where there's like, oh, this person doesn't know, who they have feelings for, blah, blah, blah. Or like he's with his girlfriend, he thinks he loves her, but he actually loves her, whatever, like a Jim and Pam situation. Not my favorite, but I'll do it. But like simply being like too easily head turned by women, hate that. Then once she's meeting the Darkling and he's kind of like there trying to like defend her, then I liked it again. So my question for you is this going to go on forever? Like, am I going to keep liking and disliking them and like being a flake?
I I am not like you in that I have to immediately jump on board the ship. I don't ship a lot of or actively like invest myself in a lot of romances. I'm with you, like romance or die, but like I don't. Sometimes I can just kind of like it and be okay with it. So I was not on board with them fully until the end of the first book.
Oh, the end of the
Then things
first
happen. I'm like,
book.
yeah, end of the first book. It took me to the end of the first book to go, yeah, that's it. That's the one I want. Um, done for me. It's not necessarily anything to do with the fault of one or the other. It's more just plot reasons. Um, but and when I say that I like the mystery character as well, I see what they're doing with that kind of love triangle. And I think as a love triangle dynamic, it's one of my favorites I've ever read because it actually is valid in some regard. There's
Mm-hmm.
definitely one side that I like more, but I can understand why there is a love triangle. Whereas a lot of times I'm like, but you liked him already and he offers nothing more. What is
Mm-hmm.
this?
Mm-hmm.
So that I kind of get. I can see you flip flopping later down the line, but I think because I understood why things were happening the way they were, and I actually had problems with what the main character was doing, I fully am like, yeah, I'm not mad with him. That happens in book two.
Mm-hmm.
So you have plenty of time, I think, for you to like and dislike him. But I feel, knowing your trends, that by the end of the book, you're going to be fully on board with this one and not abandon it.
Okay. I trust you. And if I have to like ping pong back and forth, I will. That's just not my MO. But, there's
Yeah,
a first time for everything. I want to get far enough into, and I will because I'm not going to watch the Netflix show until like early next week. I want to get far enough into this book to where I feel like I have like a little bit of a book one opinion of everybody before I see the Netflix version, because I keep hearing people talk about how hot the Darkling is in the Netflix version. Now I watched the trailer. I wasn't super taken with him. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. It could be that the character who's playing him is a lot like younger than me, but maybe not. I don't know. Like it could be like, oh, the reason I don't find him attractive is because he's a teen. I don't really know. But once I see the show, maybe that will. I'm talking about the Darkling, Ben, whatever it is, or I guess he would have to be kind of older actually, because he played Caspian when I was like a
he's
literal
not young.
child. Yeah.
He's
What now?
39.
Oh, word. Okay, he's like
He's 39.
9 or 10 years older than me then. Okay, never mind. I wasn't sure if it was, I don't know, maybe it's like the way he's kind of like stylized as like in a different life he would maybe lead a current day emo band. I don't know. It wasn't working for me in the
Well,
trailer, but
and
we'll see.
I think a lot of it also, because I kind of had that issue where all of them that people were saying that they were so attractive. I'm like, they're not ugly, but I think it's because it's a different style of fantasy that I normally watch. It's very Russian meets Game of Thrones, which is something I haven't seen a lot of before. So I
Mhm.
think the aesthetic that they're putting him in is kind of confusing my brain. That
Mhm.
might be it.
Maybe that's what it is. Regardless, I wasn't like, oh, this one ship is like so hot and has so much chemistry watching the trailer. And I think that was because in the trailer, it came across as very much like a teen book, which is fine. Like, I'm there, I'm with it, I'll ship it. But I don't know, that it didn't give me the like, I don't know if you remember this, but like, you remember when they had, what was that show that had Sabrina Carpenter in it? And it was like Girl Meets World, maybe, or something like that. It was like the reboot of the original Boy Meets World, I think it was.
Yeah, but that's not Sabrina. Is that Sabrina Carpenter? I get her and Dove Cameron confused.
It
That
was
was
like
Sabrina Carpenter. Never mind.
it was one of
Yeah,
those
Girl
like
Meets World.
yeah, it was one of the like hot blonde Disney girls. Like she's now like 23 or whatever, but is still playing a high schooler. I remember there being like a ship from that show where they were supposed to be like high school, I don't know, juniors, seniors, whatever. And everybody was constantly talking about the fact of like, oh, they have adult chemistry, like, which is like fine. They were clearly like mid to late 20s actors playing them, but like, they were just like, like adults or, young adults or whatever watching this were like, oh, there's some steamy chemistry for like a high school show or whatever. if it's something to that situation where it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be seeing that level of chemistry between these characters, so I'll get it, but I just wasn't getting that from the trailer. So I'm not sure like what direction they'll steer this, but I don't know.
Well, and in the book, they make it a big deal that he looks just like a year or two older than her. The Darkling looks like a year or two old. Is older. That's just something about the lore. However, Ben Barnes is 39, and the actress that plays her is like 21. So that's like me with a 39-year-old guy. That's a little creepy. So I think that's part of it too, that
Oh,
you
that's a
kind of lose
lot.
some of that. Like some actors can pull off that age difference, and if you don't think about the weirdness, or like if she doesn't look so young, but she actually looks like she's 21, and he looks like he's 39. I'm like, ugh.
Hmm. I didn't think that he looked like he was 39. I thought he looked like he was, I thought they all looked like they were like teens. But I only watched the trailer once and I wasn't paying that much attention.
There's a lot of guys that look really similar to me in the trailer. That
Yeah.
could have been it. That you could have been seeing somebody else.
Possibly. I don't know. I'll have to like rewatch it. But the point is, I'm trying to get like an opinion about the books set in my head before I start
Mm-hmm.
seeing like this whole, they cast a
Yeah.
really, young person for this or hot person for that or whatever and start forming opinions based on that. But
Well,
Stormy says
and I
Supergirl really
will
should have
go ahead and
paired.
warn you. I mean,
No, go ahead.
it's. I was just gonna say the book. It's so far pretty good. Well, they're really good actually, but it's extremely tropey. I mean, it is 2012 tropes through the roof, but it's tropes done well. So, and for a YA novel, especially coming out of the books I read earlier this year, I'm really excited about it. I'm like, it's really predictable. Like, I see all these things coming. Um, my best friend and I are also reading it, so she's like texting me, like, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Like, yeah. um, so it's not that hard to see what's coming or anything like that. But it's done pretty well, so at least it's fun. Whereas other things were beating you over the head with it, with media metaphor, and it wasn't good. And a lot of the time, main characters aren't likable. Whereas in this, like sometimes she does things that are wrong, where I'd be like, you shouldn't be doing that. That's the wrong way to go. But like, she's not constantly unlikable. The things she's doing, you can understand why she thinks she should do this. You're like, don't do that, but okay, I guess.
That's kind of the thing with like books where somebody starts out like young or inexperienced with war or what I like you just kind of have to like know that they're going to make decisions you're going to disagree with. Like literally a couple chapters in and I'm already like, if she and Mal just talk to each other, maybe they wouldn't have to go anyways. Maybe if we used our communication and our feelings words. Stormy in the chat said Supergirl, speaking of chemistry, should have just paired Lena and Kara instead of several lame dudes with zero chemistry. Lena and Kara are great examples as well as of fabulous chemistry and transitions really quickly into what else I watched this week. I watched the latest episode of Supergirl, and I think it's the last one in a while. I think it's going on a break, and Superman and Lois is returning. The thing with Supergirl right now is every scene is either a hit or a miss. I love, for example, Lena and Alex bonding this week. That was great. It was really, if you are viewing this as a romance between Lena and Kara, which I specifically am, I like that is what they're writing, whether they're meaning to write that or not. It is basically Lena like earning the trust of Kara's family with her soul, quite literally. Um, I don't know that it gets more romantic than that. But then there's scenes that are amiss. Like, I just am so tired of Brainy still. Every time they seem like they're about to do something interesting with him, there's just like something out of far left that comes along. And I'm like, why are we using screen time on this? Like, feels like a whole different show, melodrama out of nothing. And I will also note in my notes here, I've just said they are season 2 of Stranger Thingsing Kara, meaning in order for her to develop, they have isolated her from the entire rest of the cast, and she has an entire different world she's playing in, entire different characters she's interacting with for an extended period of time with zero contact with the other characters. I understood why they did that with 11 and Stranger Things in season 2, but I'm not sure this late into Supergirl, where it is not season 2, 3, 4, or 5 of Supergirl, they would isolate her like that for character development. I think that should have come a little earlier. And for Batwoman, you mentioned Alice and Ocean earlier, Carrie. I've said that Alice's storyline is the reason shallow critics say romance ruins shows and characters. I don't know, like, I don't ship Alice and Ocean first and foremost, and that's probably why this isn't working for me. But having Alice be separate from everyone else, having her go on this whole thing. Here's the thing, Alice shines when she gets a chance to play opposite someone that she gets to antagonize. So the scene that she shined the most in this week was the scene where she like antagonizes a guy who thinks he's there in therapy and then throws a knife at his neck and kills him. Lovely, beautiful, 10 out of 10. Would love to see it. But most of the time, we're seeing her go through like this internal self agony, and it needs to come in smaller doses with a little bit more of her being the initiator rather than the reactor. And for her to be the initiator, she needs to be interacting with more of the main cast, I think. I don't like that she basically never interacts with the new Batwoman, for example. I think that's doing a disservice to the new Batwoman, because old Batwoman, all her best scenes were with Alice. Alice is one of the strongest players on the show. One of the things that's going to make the new Batwoman look like a stronger player is to have scenes with other really strong players. So I would like to see her get the chance to interact with somebody like Alice more and really play on that level. But just my opinion. Also, everyone on that show is really hot and was particularly hot this week. Kate, what else did you watch or read this week?
That's about it. I can't think of anything.
Just Shadow and Bone.
Yeah, just Shadow and Bone.
It's finals week for you, isn't it?
No, that's in 2 weeks.
Oof. Well, fingers crossed. Speaking of in 2 weeks, next week. Okay, so we are at the hour. I do want to mention, and mentioning this for Kate and for anybody else, we might or might not go live next week because I do get my second COVID vaccine at 5 p.m. next week on Wednesday. And they say that, like, if you have symptoms, it doesn't hit you right away. It'll hit you like 4 hours later. So, like, what we can do is go live, and then you'll see me go from like normal to like descend into madness as COVID symptoms number 2 hit me. But that's what I said last time, and we all watched me live experience nothing except my arm kind of like hurting or being weak, and then it literally was better after that hour. So like, we'll see how I'm feeling, but if I feel okay, I will not think of the future and I'll just go live. And then if I start feeling badly, we'll like end early, or I'll just like pass out and Kate will take over and the content will be better that way anyway. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. Next time I see you, I will be fully vaccinated. Yay. Shout out Pfizer for doing something, probably, and I'll probably be fine. We don't know. Happy to be experimented on, I guess. Bye.